Pastor Creflo Dollar must have seemed like the pinnacle of success to everyone who first saw him. The man was so opulent that you would assume he had several gold mines buried in his backyard. However, Pastor Creflo Dollar did not possess a secret mind. What he possessed was an astonishing degree of self-assurance that boiled away all self-doubt. The individual felt that he had been selected for something greater and better as a result. However, many of this supposedly untouchable man's supporters started to notice the flaws in the image he had attempted to project, as some dubious rumors began to surface. And like a deck of cards, his enormous fan base, wealth, and influence all fell with him when his walls collapsed. Beneath it all, Pastor Creflo Dollar faced terrible repercussions. Many people believed that someone like Pastor Creflo Dollar was the key to achieving the new position they were seeking for in life. Even others who did not hold the same religious views as him listened to his Polish sermons for guidance, since he preached the prosperity gospel with such confidence and assurance. For them, he was a man who had to be knowledgeable about his subject. He was a complete success. He was wealthy. He was well-known. He was connected to influential people. What more could a person ask for in a role model? The man had begun from the very bottom, gained access to the inner circle of society's most influential people. Pastor Creflo Dollar was a powerful symbol of the American ideal for a lot of people. In a school cafeteria, he had begun in silence, with no hands applauding each syllable that from his lips. His trip was far from spectacular. Creflo Augustus Dollar Jr. was Creflo Dollar's birth name. In January 1962, he was accepted into the family by his parents. Creflo grew up in a modest household in College Park, Georgia, where daily life was governed by discipline and a strong religious conviction. His mother worked as a food server at Kathleen Mitchell Elementary School's cafeteria, while his father was a police officer. For their regular meals, the family wasn't scraping the floor. However, they were not without difficulties either. They lived in an African-American neighborhood called College Park. Additionally, it faced its own challenges, in spite of the members' enduring sense of solidarity. However, Creflo was protected by his parents, who upheld discipline and faith, which served as a strong foundation for his life. The little Creflo was able to dream because of this. He also aspired to play professional football when he grew older. This young man did more than simply dream. He put in a lot of effort to realize this desire. He was actually prepared to take the next big step, playing college football, when he was accepted to West Georgia College. But all of that hope was dashed when the unimaginable occurred. Creflo experienced a severe injury in the early 1980s that forced him to veer from the course he had always followed. Creflo knew he needed more assistance than the physicians could provide while he was recuperating, since the heartache was so severe. He subsequently started going to Bible study sessions, and one day he said that something had shifted within him. He experienced a spiritual awakening that totally changed his course in life. He was starting to have a deeper understanding of the Bible. Creflo started holding his own little Bible study gatherings after developing a closer bond. And the most amazing event took place. People continued to arrive. By 1981, weekly attendance had risen to over 100. Taffy Bolton, a young woman who eventually became his wife and the companion who supported him during every phase of his ministry adventure, was one of them. He graduated from West Georgia College in 1984 with a degree in educational therapy. He accepted a position helping individuals with learning disabilities at the Brona Psychiatric Institute in Atlanta. Patience and clear communication were necessary for this work. Creflo acquired these abilities and excelled in his work, but he started to sense that there was more he could be doing. Despite his best efforts, he was unable to let go of it. Then, 2 years after receiving his degree, in 1986, Dollar made a choice that would forever alter his life. He founded World Changers Ministries Christian Center in the Kathleen Mitchell Elementary School cafeteria. It was the same school where he had been a member of the first batch of black pupils following integration, and the same cafeteria where his mother had formerly served meals. It was good enough for Creflo. It was an excellent one. His true goal was to make the Bible seem approachable and simple to comprehend. Less than 10 people showed up for the first service, despite his admirable intention. Nevertheless, this had no negative effect on his mood. He boldly and simply conveyed his message. Gradually, he was able to establish a connection with his audience. His little group of followers grew, and more people started to occupy the seats. During that time, Creflo developed his teachings into what is now called the prosperity gospel. He taught that a better life and financial success might be attained with faith, honest confession, and giving liberally, particularly through tithing. His platform was defined by this. This offered hope to those in dire need of a financial breakthrough. And the numbers kept growing with each sermon. Creflo's ministry had grown to such an extent by 1991 that it was renamed World Changers Church International, which reflected the extent of its potential impact. Millions of families were exposed to his teachings through his radio and television program, Changing Your World. He was no longer merely a Georgia pastor. He was now a worldwide televangelist. In the belief that his message would help them achieve the financial miracle they had been hoping for, people from Africa, Canada, India, and the United Kingdom tuned in at 0629. Creflo started construction on the World Dome, a huge sanctuary in College Park that can accommodate 500 people. Despite the ambitious project's approximately $20 million cost, he was adamant on finishing it debt-free. As a result, he made sure his congregation provided funding for the entire project. Additionally, the World Dome's doors were formally inaugurated on December 24, 1995. The headquarters in College Park evolved into more than a house of worship. It served as a daycare facility as well. There were television studios there, and it was from this that the publishing operations and outreach initiatives to disseminate Creflo's teachings around the world were born. With over 30,000 members by the mid-2000s, World Changers Church International had developed into one of the biggest megachurches in the United States. Atlanta was not the end of the expansion. The church declared in 2007 that it will establish up to 500 fellowship churches across the globe. As a result, new satellite churches were established in Dallas, Houston, Los Angeles, and New York. The ministry opened offices in Canada, Australia, and Africa, expanding its reach beyond the nation's borders. The ministry's first foray into the Asia-Pacific area was the opening of the Gold Coast Church in June 2014. These satellite churches closely adhered to his teachings, but were run by local leaders. World Changers Church International soon revealed that it made roughly $70 million a year. With a roughly $80 million operating budget, the ministry was able to reach even more people because to its financial stability. He even had a daily television show called Changing Your World, which contributed to the global dissemination of his prosperity ideas. The program reached around 1 million households in more than 150 nations. Each episode demonstrated how believing may result in actual breakthroughs by focusing on themes of personal empowerment, health, and financial success. His success was not solely due to television. He was now a best-selling author as well. Scripture and inspirational techniques were blended in his publications, such as 8 Steps to Create the Life You Want and Winning in Tough Times. They provided readers with precise instructions on how to succeed. He became one of the world's most influential televangelists because of his ability to make spiritual teachings seem applicable. His ministry generated other revenue streams to support his expanding empire, in addition to his writing by selling DVDs, online courses, and other materials. His detractors also grew in number as he did. His message was not universally accepted. Changing Your World, according to critics, reduced faith to a business transaction in which donors were enticed to part with cash in exchange for blessings. These were the indications that Creflo had made religion a business. Many detractors also cited his extravagant lifestyle as proof that his teachings were more advantageous to him than to his disciples. They reported that some churchgoers were so enticed by his promise of both financial and spiritual improvement that they even traveled great distances to attend his services. In fact, research were done to support their claims. According to one of those studies, many members of prosperity gospel congregations did not see the financial breakthroughs that were promised to them. As their pastors amassed enormous fortune, many instead persisted in their struggles. Many believed that the leaders of these churches were the only ones who benefited from the entire idea. Creflo's ministry grew in spite of the criticism in order to maintain ties between all these congregations. He made advantage of cutting-edge broadcasting technologies. He even mentioned the use of holograms in sermons to come. Critics questioned if his high-tech approach produced real spiritual relationships or transformed ministry into a business strategy. Whatever arguments the critics made, Creflo refused to concede. He maintained that Christians might accomplish more good deeds in the world when they were financially successful. He defended his views using well-chosen Bible passages, claiming that his wealth was evidence that his message was effective. His followers concurred, thinking that his ministry had made a lot of people's lives better. His detractors disagreed, arguing that genuine spiritual development was more about character and faith than wealth and extravagance. Some believed that pursuing genuine spiritual development while being financially successful was not a negative thing. However, they also noted that a reassessment was necessary when the financial component went out of control. They also mentioned Creflo's most ostentatious asset, a multi-million-dollar house in Fayetteville, Georgia. The estate is reportedly spread across several acres, and a lengthy driveway keeps the home out of the way, guaranteeing seclusion and comfort. Originally constructed in the 1990s, it underwent extensive modifications, and additional wings were added to give it its current size. Along with this home, Creflo previously had a Warner Center high-rise apartment in New York City. The two-bedroom condo had magnificent city views and was situated on a very high floor. Despite being smaller than his other homes, its position made it an obvious sign of exclusivity and wealth. Later, he made a sizable profit when he sold the apartment for more than he had originally paid. In addition to his outstanding collection of homes, he also owns a luxurious residence in Bergen County, New Jersey. His cars reflect his taste for grandeur. He has a number of Rolls-Royce vehicles, some of which are worth millions of dollars. He doesn't only drive fancy automobiles. In order to effectively disseminate his ministry, he also has a private jet. Prior to purchasing his present plane, he was the owner of a different private aircraft that was involved in a London accident. He has frequently said that he uses these pricey acquisitions as instruments to carry out his spiritual mission. He often cites Proverbs 13:22, which discusses accumulating money. The concept is that believers might obtain wealth by contributing money and having faith. He refers to this planting as a process in which financial contributions serve as a spiritual investment. More has been done by Creflo than that. He has preached that Jesus' sacrifice eliminated financial hardship in addition to covering sin. He believes that poverty is more than just an economic issue. It is an inability to assert God's promises. He preached that prayer can bring wealth in addition to spiritual development. His view simply served to increase his controversy, and he soon came under official surveillance. 6 televangelists, including Creflo, were the subject of an investigation in 2007 by the U.S. Senate Finance Committee, which was chaired by Senator Charles Grassley. The question of whether these ministries were abusing tax-exempt donations for private luxury was the main focus of the investigation. In order to investigate into salaries, private aircraft, and opulent mansions, investigators asked World Changes Church International for financial information. Nevertheless, Creflo declined to supply the records. His legal team contended that without a subpoena, the committee lacked the right to seek them. He was among the least cooperative individuals in the investigation as a result. The lawsuit was dropped by the Senate Finance Committee in 2011, without any further action. Some people thought that the closure was caused in part by pressure from powerful Christian organizations. Despite the investigation's conclusion, it brought up important issues about religious groups' openness. Creflo and his spouse owned several opulent homes close to their church headquarters in Georgia. According to investigations, his financial transactions were further questioned by offshore firms connected to him in the Bahamas. Financial transparency remained a source of concern. Christian watchdog Ministry Watch regularly rated World Changers Church International with an FTHE Church's failure to provide important financial documents, including audited statements and IRS filings, resulted in the failing grade. These records are thought to be necessary for approving the use of gifts. There were accusations that church finances were being misused for personal luxury instead of ministry activity because of the lack of openness. Watchdog groups argued that leaders like Creflo needed to be held accountable and campaigned for tougher rules on tax-exempt religious organizations. Then, in June 2012, there was another problem. Creflo was taken into custody by police at his Fayetteville, Georgia, residence. When his 15-year-old daughter disobeyed his order to prevent her from going to a party, she accused him of choking her, punching her, and striking her with a shoe. She reported to the police that he had scratched her neck while wrestling her to the ground. Creflo refuted the claims, claiming that eczema, not a physical altercation, was the origin of the scrape. A few days later, he told his congregation that the charges were unfounded. Standing ovations were given by his audience when he acknowledged that he had been emotional at times, but maintained that he had never struck or strangled his daughter. Prosecutors eventually dismissed the charges when Creflo finished an anger management program. Thus, the matter never got to trial. The episode spurred a broader conversation about domestic violence in religious communities. even if the legal issue has already subsided. According to some critics, churches frequently deter victims from coming forward, particularly when there are influential leaders involved. Others drew attention to the fact that some interpretations of the verse, such as spare the rod, spoil the child, might be used to defend severe punishment. Even if the legal issues were resolved, there were still concerns about Creflo's leadership and handling of the matter. However, the disputes only grew more heated. Creflo made a request in 2015 that shocked people all around the world. Many of his detractors were astounded by what they heard. Creflo requested financial assistance from his fans in order to purchase an expensive Gulfstream private jet. Hundreds of thousands of people were requested to donate a few $100s each as part of the Project G650 initiative. He claimed that the plane was essential for both his ministry and his global travels. He was flying an older Gulfstream type at the time. It had flown millions of miles and been in service for many years, Creflo explained. Among its many major issues was an engine failure that occurred when it was flying over the Pacific Ocean. The aircraft experienced a nose gear failure during a cancelled takeoff in London during a subsequent journey to Australia. His ministry merely declared that it was unsafe to operate the aircraft any longer. Additionally, they asserted that the new aircraft would enable them to deliver supplies and food for humanitarian efforts. Experts in aviation, however, disputed this assertion. They contended that the ministry's desired aircraft was far more costly than larger aircraft that could readily address humanitarian demands and had a very little baggage capacity. This simply drew further criticism and raised additional doubts about the aircraft's actual function. Some questioned why, unlike many other pastors, Creflo couldn't simply travel commercial planes. Religious watchdog organizations denounced the campaign due to the intense criticism, claiming it demonstrated how tax-exempt ministries might exert financial pressure on their members. The jet's fundraising page vanished in a matter of days, but rumors surfaced that Creflo was still looking into alternative ways to acquire the aircraft through private donations. In one speech, he even addressed his detractors by stating that no one could stop him from believing in God for a fancy jet. His response to critics did not gain him any followers outside the church, despite the applause from his congregation. The controversy reignited discussions on churches' financial openness. A few years prior, Creflo had already been questioned in a U.S. Senate probe into televangelist funding. Accountability concerns persisted, even though no legal action was taken. Many people, especially Christians, disagreed with supporters who thought there was nothing wrong with assisting their pastor. In fact, preachers who associated wealth with faith were criticized by gospel artist Kirk Franklin, who called it a lack of character. Then, on June 20, 2022, Creflo himself broke the heartbreaking news to many ardent Creflo followers. His sermon, titled The Great Misunderstanding, stunned his congregation at World Changes Church International in Georgia. Creflo acknowledged that his tithing teachings were incorrect throughout the sermon. He clarified that Christians living under grace were exempt from tithing, which was a requirement of Old Testament law. Rather, he presented a novel concept known as grace-based giving. He urged followers to make their own decisions about how much to donate, free from religious pressure. In order to bolster his argument, he cited Romans 6:14, which states, "Sin shall not have dominion over you, for ye are not under the law, but under grace." Creflo acknowledged that Christians were never intended to give out of necessity or fear. He instructed his followers to discard all of his writings and lectures that encouraged tithing. This was really startling. For decades, Creflo had insisted on tithing. Despite acknowledging his error, Creflo declined to offer an apology, despite the expectations of many. Rather, he explained to his congregation that his past transgressions were a necessary component of his quest for grace. "I will not apologize, because if it were not for me going down that route, I would not have ended up where I am right now," he said. However, detractors believed that an apology was required. They emphasized that his followers had contributed money for decades, believing that God had demanded it, and that Creflo had taken this money from them, turning them into multi-millionaires in the process. Some detractors even suggested that he should give refunds for the books and materials he had sold if he genuinely thought his previous teachings were incorrect. Others contended that he should abandon the way of life that resulted from those teachings in order to demonstrate his sincerity. Creflo needs a Zacchaeus spirit, according to Atlanta pastor Michael Clayton Harris, who cited the biblical tax collector who made up to those he had harmed. Harris felt that merely altering his message was insufficient. Creflo had to own up to the financial toll His previous lessons had taken on people's lives. Several watchdog groups joined Pastor Harris in pointing out that his ministry lacked financial transparency, even though Creflo may have altered his tithing beliefs. He had not mentioned financial responsibility, and his lavish lifestyle had not changed. While many attacked Creflo, others applauded him for acknowledging his mistake, viewing his change of heart as a sign of spiritual development. Despite a series of controversies, Creflo and his family remained committed to their mission. Furthermore, one of the most criticized individuals in contemporary televangelism is still Creflo.